is up, everyone, and welcome in to a special live edition of the Your Celtics Source podcast. Saturday evening, a bunch of excellent college games going on. Duke surviving, actually kind of blowing TCU out. Texas and Gonzaga battling it out as we record here. Obviously, Michigan winning lots of good games, upsets already. And so, with that being said, I'm going to keep this relatively short. But we haven't gotten a chance. We've been doing a lot of Celtics stuff over the last couple of weeks, and I did take a couple of days off earlier in the month. I was really sick. Heading in, as they say, March comes in as a lion, out as a lamb. I would argue that in New England, March goes in as a lion and goes out as a lion. But that being said, right, I was really under the weather coming in, and so we didn't get much time to, do Celtics stuff, and so I was trying to get caught up on Celtics stuff. Celtics with a, gritty win, you could say, last night against the Grizzlies, a pretty poor performance around the board, around everybody. Jason Tatum had probably his worst game since coming back. It really was up to offensive rebounding just to give the Celtics extra possessions, win the margins. Luca Garza was terrific on that end. 22 points, season high, and just a menace on the boards as he has been all season, but really took advantage of Memphis not playing a true center in that game. But that being said, I wanted to take a step back and look at the NBA, right? And we're going to, in the back half of the show, do some awards. We're not going to go totally, in depth into every award. This is just my initial thoughts on if I were a voter, which hopefully someday I can be, who I would give the awards to. And I'll keep a little bit of a secret on where I have Jaylen Brown, where I think he should fit in. There's questions on whether he should be first-team All-NBA, second-team All-NBA, MVP conversation. All of that stuff we'll get to in the back half of the show. But I wanted to start with the Cade Cunningham injury. We'll talk about Luka Doncic, Wemby, all the things that they're doing. But Cade Cunningham. Obviously, Cade Cunningham has been the face of that franchise, the Detroit Pistons, right? Carrying this team after, 2 years ago, winning just 14 games, 29-game losing streak. I think that set an NBA record. But, last year they got a glimpse of the postseason. They lost to, I believe it was the Cavs in round one. Actually, no, maybe it was the Knicks that they lost to in round one. And then this year, they have just, taken it to the next level. Cade Cunningham was just dominant throughout the regular season. MVP candidate for sure. Averaging, 24, 25 points a game, but making plays for other, averaging, a double-double when it came to points and assists, averaging like 11 assists per game or something like that. And taking a Pistons team that doesn't have much offense in terms of ball handling and shooting besides Cade Cunningham. You have Duncan Robinson, you have Tobias Harris who can make, a couple shots here and there, but they've been one of the worst teams in the league percentage-wise, right? They've hung their hat on the defensive end, getting out in transition. Obviously, Asar Thompson, a big part of that. He is, one of the best defenders in the league. I'd probably have him first team, all defensive team. There's only two all defensive teams, but I definitely have him first team, all defensive team. Multiple guys could be on that team for the Pistons. Jalen Duren has taken a big step forward this year, playing that pick and roll option with Cade Cunningham, right? But other than that, they don't have ball handling besides Cade Cunningham. And we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. They have some wins in there for sure, but they have taken a little bit of a step back offensively. They've lost a couple of games in this stretch before Cade Cunningham went down. just because teams were starting to figure them out. And those, the Pistons are one of those teams that they play super hard in the regular season, right? This is I'm not going to say a prove-it year for the Pistons, but the first year where they have just, skyrocketed expectations, right? They're playing super hard. They're going all out each and every night. And you wonder if in the postseason, I should say, when everyone ups their effort, everyone ups the intensity, does that maybe margin that they have on other teams decrease a little bit? Are they not winning the effort margins? Are they not winning the diving for loose balls, rebounding margins? Obviously, they're still a good rebounding team with Jalen Durbin and all the guys that they have. With Sarr Thompson, a good rebounder. Cade Cunningham, a good rebounder. Right? Cade Cunningham, Jason Tatum, very similar players. Obviously, Jason Tatum relies a little bit more on the three-point shooting. I'm hoping that changes, because you see a game like last night against the Memphis Grizzlies where he goes, 3 of 11 from 3, something like that. Truly horrific shooting numbers from Jason Tatum. But, this show's not about Jason Tatum tonight. Cade Cunningham, right? He goes down, and he's going to be out the rest of the regular season. Now, the Pistons have a 4-game lead on the Celtics with 13, maybe 12 games to go. My guess is the Pistons are going to hold on to the 1 seed, because I just don't think there's enough games for the Pistons to, for the Pistons to lose that spot, right? They're going to hold on, is my guess. Now, they could lose that spot. It's not out of the question, especially because the Celtics are playing well for the most part, despite a poor performance last night, although they still get the win. That being said, the Celtics have a really tough schedule. So do the Pistons as well. But more importantly, this is a good opportunity for the Pistons to start to introduce some of their younger point guards, their younger guys that would otherwise not be playing. They bring them in, and, guys like Dennis Jenkins, right? He scores 22 points last night against the Warriors. Not that the Warriors are a hard team to beat right now, although they still play play with effort each and every night. Right? But the Pistons, have to get production out of their backup point guards, because they're going to need it in the playoffs, because everybody knows that this team has no shooting, no ball handling around Cade Cunningham. Teams are going to double Cade Cunningham on almost every possession in the postseason and leave guys wide open on the perimeter to knock down shots. And maybe they knock down shots in a series, maybe they knock down shots in 1 or 2 games, but for the most part, the expectation is they're probably not going to make shots. They're going to have to, in order to win, they're going to have to get production off of, backup point guards. Maybe, guys where they don't double, and then, you have an option to kick it out to shooters, right? They trade for Kevin Huerter in the at the trade deadline. Kevin Huerter having his worst 3-point shooting of his career, despite probably being a better 3-point shooter than most of the guys on that team. That being said, that shows the trust that the front office has in this team, or should I say lack of trust, right? The fact that they don't go out and spend in a season where they are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. I think it's a big mistake, because this was the year for the Pistons. Jason Tatum's coming back healthy. The East is going to be shaken up crazy next year. If Giannis moves out, we'll see what happens. Actually, funny enough, I do want to talk about Giannis later in the show. Just a really interesting dynamic between him and the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Milwaukee Bucks really, it's looking like, obviously, a trade is what's probably going to happen. But there's some interesting dynamics around him and a contract extension and all of that that the Bucks have to think about before they even, consider trading him. We'll get to that in a second, right? But to finish up the Cade Cunningham conversation, right? Cade Cunningham, assuming all goes well, and obviously, we hope for the best for anybody that goes through an injury like that. But he's going to be back for the playoffs, round 1. But in the meantime, the Pistons have to use this as a way to get better offensively. They have to find ways to, win games not using the margins, using their scoring, their ball handling, because those margins are going to decrease in the playoffs. They're going to need someone alongside Cade Cunningham who can dribble the ball, who can play that point guard role. Ausar Thompson is not that kind of player. Duncan Robinson, definitely not that player. Tobias Harris has really been their only, their number 2 option shooting-wise. Obviously, Duren has been their number 2 option scoring-wise, but he does all his stuff around the rim. That stuff is all going to go away if they can't find somebody who can dribble the ball. And I'm going to leave it at that because, I think Cade Cunningham's going to be back in the playoffs. I already, I'm not going to say I'm low on the Pistons, right? I can't say, I'm high on my Celtics right now, obviously, because Jason Tatum comes back and they're winning games and whatever. The Knicks, always a scary team. The Cavs, have really fallen off since James Harden had gotten there. They started so hot, that honeymoon era, you could say, with him and Donovan Mitchell, and they've fallen off defensively for sure. And the Pistons remain strong defensively, still the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference. But I'm worried about that offense. I'm worried that they could be, they're probably not going to be a first-round exit. If Cade is back. If Cade's not back, they could lose to a team like the Charlotte Hornets or maybe the Hawks, who, what are they on, like a 10 or 11 game winning streak right now? Ridiculous what the Hawks are doing. I thought they were the always 500 team. I thought they were the team that never went more than 1 or 2 games outside of 500. Miami Heat playing well as of recently as well, right? So a lot of these, this is going to be the first year where all 4 teams in the play-in are above 500, and you have 2 teams in the 7 and 8 spot that are, 7 or 8 games above 500. I think the Charlotte Hornets are back in 10th, and they are 2 games above 500. They've fallen off a little bit as of recently, but still, it's going to be a tough first round for the Celtics if they're in second and first or wherever they are, along with the Pistons. It's going to be a tough first round matchup for those with those 7th and 8th seeds for the first time in a while, right? So I'm not too worried about the Pistons in the first round, but they've already decreased. My expectations for the Pistons are already lower, given that teams have found a way to figure out that Cade Cunningham offense and just shut it down entirely. The only way that the Pistons are going to have success in the playoff is if they can get some sort of perimeter shooting from guys that have really struggled shooting the ball this year. That's the Detroit Pistons conversation. Let's move on to Luka Doncic, because what he and the Lakers are doing right now is just ridiculous. And to be honest, you can look at Luka's scoring, right? He had, 40 points against the Rockets on Wednesday night, back-to-back in Miami, a terrible travel, getting in at 5 a.m., this is a game where you would think maybe they would, sit LeBron, they would sit Luka, they would sit Reeves, and just see what they could do against the Heat team. Sort of schedule loss. And nope, LeBron plays, Luka plays, Reeves plays. And what does Luka do? He drops 60. Those baskets in Miami, they might be a little magic in those baskets, because Bam Adebayo was scoring 83 in those baskets. Luka coming in and scoring 83 in those baskets. Something's going on in South Beach. Now, something's always going on in South Beach. That's just what South Beach is. But, Luka Doncic, I actually want to give most of the credit to him. And, I'm a Celtics fan. I don't like the Lakers. I've never liked Luka Doncic. Obviously, the Celtics beat Luka and the Mavs in the championship in 2024, right? Luka Donuts, we call him. Fat Luka. Never plays defense. Foul. Baiter. Crybaby. None of that's happening right now. Not only is he not complaining to the refs now, part of that is the fact that he has 15 technicals, and if he gets another one, he gets suspended, and the Lakers are playing so well right now, they can't afford to lose Luka. But the other part of that is he's taken that maybe complaining and, whining from the officials and turned that into trash talk against the opposing team, against fans that are booing him in the crowd. And when Luka is yelling at fans, when he is trash talking, he has it going. He is almost unstoppable when he is in that mode. I always try and tell fans, when you have a really good player that loves to talk trash, don't engage, because that only makes him better. We saw what Grant Williams did in 2023 when he tried to, get all up into Jimmy Butler's head. And what did that happen? What happened? They just obviously Tatum goes down, but they go down 0-3 in that series. Jimmy Butler just goes off after that, right? Don't try and, get into the head and, try and out-trash talk a guy that is known for doing that is one of the best in the world at doing it. You're never going to win that battle. He's only going to turn up the intensity, turn up the energy, and that's what he's doing right now. He's dropping 60. He's dropping 40, averaging, 42 points in the last 10 games during this win streak for the Lakers. Just ridiculous stuff. And he is reliable on the defensive end. Now, here's one of the interesting things about Luka, right? Luka's not been a good defender, obviously, right? He's never been that guy. He's always getting beat off the dribble and whatever. But he doesn't make stupid mistakes. You look at a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns versus Luka, and obviously they play different positions and whatever. But Karl-Anthony Towns is a better one-on-one defender and just has the better athleticism than Luka does. But Karl-Anthony Towns is prone to making stupid mistakes, off-the-ball mistakes, fouling when he doesn't need to, losing track of guys. All that stuff that just results in him fouling out of games, him, giving up easy buckets. Luka might, not be a great one-on-one defender, but you can scheme for him. You can game plan for him because he doesn't make mistakes. He might get beat, but he doesn't make mistakes. He is reliable on the defensive end. He has LeBron with him who, doesn't play much defense anymore, but doesn't make mistakes. Austin Reeves doesn't make mistakes despite probably being the worst defender out of the three of them. And they have become, in the last 10 games, an average defensive team. Right? They're not a great defensive team. They're an average defensive team. But when you have the offensive talent that you have right now with Luka, with what LeBron is doing, and we're going to get to LeBron in just a second, when you have the offensive talent that these guys have, being an average defensive team makes you a championship contender, right? You might not win. You might go down second round. But, if they face the Rockets, which I don't think they're going to face the Rockets, but if they face the Wolves even, right? Probably who they're slated up to match up against, right? That 3-6 seed matchup, right? The Lakers are probably a lock at this point with the tiebreakers to be that 3 seed. They're now 20 games over 500, something like that. They have just turned the page around since that All-Star break. And, 50% goes to Luka, and I actually think him having 15 technicals at this point is really driving him. The other 50%, 30% goes to LeBron, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. But that other 20% goes to what JJ Redick is doing right now, right? He is coaching his butt off defensively in particular, finding ways to game plan around Luka, game plan around Reeves. Two guys, right? We just talked about how they don't make mistakes. DeAndre Ayton is bought into that role, no longer trying to, not be Clint Capella, as he said, right? Trying to be just the guy that rim runs, is a menace defensively, blocks the rim, just playing his role, not trying to be the offensive guy, right? And then you get to LeBron. And LeBron, What is he being paid? $50 million. He's probably not going to be on the team next year. He just gets paid too much for what he does at this point in his career. He's probably going to have, a sort of sayonara, sort of, one last year, farewell tour, if you may, next season. But for this season, LeBron is the third option on this team offensively. He has to be. He has to be with what Luka is doing, what Reeves is doing, right? In this team, they're probably not going to win the championship this year, but you take that $50 million that LeBron is making, and you can get, versatile wing defenders, 3-and-D guys around Luka. You probably need another center. This team can be one of the best teams in the NBA next season. Not that they already aren't this season, or at least at this point, right? But LeBron, he is being just that facilitator, just playing off the ball, screening, making rolls, finding his teammates for easy three-pointers, easy layups, doing all the off-ball Derek White type stuff, to make a little Celtics comparison, right? Obviously, LeBron is, at a different level than Derek White is, but they're doing similar stuff right now, right? LeBron is bought in defensively. He's putting the energy as we ramp up towards the playoffs. He's playing back-to-backs now, right? He wasn't doing that earlier in the season, right? And obviously, I think a lot of that came with the fact that he was, had sciatica to start the season and didn't have his legs under him, didn't have the energy, the stamina to play back-to-backs. But specifically that Miami game, right? You get in at 5 a.m. That's a game that LeBron should be sitting. And yet he decides to play, and he goes out there and he scores 25 points. But even if he doesn't score 25 points, even if he's scoring 15 points, he's just being a brilliant off-ball playmaker. And the Lakers right now, they are a scary team against, if they play the Rockets, if they play the Wolves. I think they could even beat the Nuggets with how banged up the Nuggets are right now, assuming the Nuggets can get healthy. The Nuggets can't defend for their life. I mean, the Lakers are... It's hard to believe that I'm saying this, well, I guess not that I'm saying that the facts, the stats back it up, that the Lakers are a better team than the Nuggets. I mean, that should not be possible with the guys that they have on the floor, but it is, right? You have, they're probably not going to beat the Spurs. They're probably not going to beat the Thunder. Although, in a close game, if they can make it a close game against the Spurs, I'm taking the Lakers. Lakers are one of, if not the best clutch time team this season, just because you have Luka, you have Reeves, you have LeBron, right? The Spurs are, they have Wemby, but, you can't always rely on Wemby, if they, put two guys on him and make him, play out on the perimeter, his percentages go down, right? But the Lakers, we're going to wrap up the Lakers conversation here. The Lakers are just terrifying the rest of the Western Conference at this moment. We talked about Cade Cunningham. We talked about Luka, two of the probably biggest stories in the NBA. The last story that just occurred to me as we were sitting down to record this is the Giannis situation. And then we're going to get to my sort of postseason awards. And these are just preliminary. Gosh, I cannot speak right now. But, those are just my initial thoughts on the awards. They're subject to change with 12 games to go. Giannis. Obviously, the Bucks asked for him to sit down, right? They're trying to do a heavy tank now. They realize that they have no chance of making it into the play-in tournament. They are going to try and tank and see if they can get some sort of lottery luck. But Giannis doesn't want to sit. It's best for the Bucks, for his trade value, for just the team's goals of getting a good pick in this upcoming loaded draft. Giannis has to sit. But Giannis doesn't want to. And I don't think it's because he really wants to play right now. I think it's because he knows this is his last season and he wants to play one more home game. He wants to, finish this year out, all that he's given for this Milwaukee fan base, right? He wants to finish on a high note for at least the Milwaukee fans, right? So it doesn't seem like he's leaving, he's quitting on the team, right? But he's done enough. He's shown that he doesn't want to quit. It's It's much better for the Bucks to shut him down. And here's the thing. It could be possible you put him through some injury or some, quote-unquote surgery that they love to do, right? Maybe, you say he's out for 2 weeks and then he can play the final home season game and give the fans what they want on that last home season game. And maybe, whatever happens then. But, let him... I mean, if you're Giannis, you have to do this. If you're the Bucks, I mean, you got to override him at this point, right? I know he's the face of your franchise, and the NBA is, very unique in the compared to the NFL and the fact that the players control the NBA, unlike the owners, like in the NFL, right? But there's the contract extension that he wants coming up, right? And right, I don't think he gets it if he gets traded, so that's a big thing. But to be honest, I don't think that matters at this point. You have to keep him healthy, or you're going to get nothing back for him in return. He already has the 4 calf strains that he's gone through in the last couple of years, right? Those obviously lead to Achilles, so you have to find a way to get him healthy, get him off his feet. Okay, time for All NBA awards. But before we do that, I ask that you please like and subscribe, follow on social media. We're going to have an instant reaction after the Wolves game. It won't be live, but we'll have an instant reaction on YouTube. You can go check out the instant reaction from last night's game against the Memphis Grizzlies. A poor performance across the board, as I've mentioned, but a win is a win. Celtics badly needed that to stay in that second place in the Eastern Conference, with the Knicks winning and the Pistons winning. You can check out this podcast episode and all podcast episodes on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Please give a like and a rating there. That's really appreciated. And now, without further ado, let's start with, I think it's easy to lock in that Victor Wembanyama is the Defensive Player of the Year. But could he be the MVP as well? I think if you stay like this, the SGA has it pretty much locked up. But if somehow the Spurs can get the 1 seed, I have to give it to Wemby, because he's the best defensive player in the year, or best defensive player we've seen in a long time. He is driving this team's success. He's doing ridiculous things. He's playing it up as a point guard at 7'5", whatever he is. He's probably even taller than that. Just doing, alien-like things. That's why they call him the alien. I think I'd have to, at this point, give SGA the nod as the MVP. But I'm putting Wemby second, ahead of Jokic, then Luca, then Brown. Those are my top 5 MVP choices right there. And SGA, Wemby, Jokic, Luca, Brown. Cade Cunningham is going to be 6th in my eyes. If he plays enough. He probably won't even play enough at this point to be eligible. I haven't thought about who I'd have later down the line. It's hard to give Jokic credit right now with his struggles and, them being a 6 seed, right? And, Wemby is just carrying this, a team that, as for the playoffs, right? Teams don't usually have success in their first year going to the playoffs, right? It's just, when the intensity, everything ramps up, the point guards in particular struggle. But your best player is not a point guard. That's the difference between a lot of these teams, right? Your best player is not a point guard that's going to get heavy pressure, ball pressure, heavy traps and double teams, and have to make decisions in tight moments. He is a 7'7", 7'5", 7'6", 7'7", whatever it is, player that plays above the rim, plays, all over the court. Yes, he plays a little bit of point guard, but mostly, he is a guy that doesn't get impacted by those sorts of things that might happen in the playoffs because of the nature of his position, right? Centers don't usually struggle like that because they don't get that defensive pressure, right? He just has to make shots. And, if he's able to make shots, he might be able to lead this team to its first championship since Kawhi, but more importantly, break the NBA norm that teams can't do this in their first year in the playoffs. I think the last time this happened was Portland with Bill Walton, right? I think that was the last time that a team did this really in their first year going to the playoffs. But he is the alien, right? And as we know with aliens, right, unexpected things could happen. And I have this team as the second best team in the NBA behind the Thunder. And obviously they've beaten the Thunder multiple times this season. They held the tiebreaker. If they can just tie with the Thunder, they will be the 1 seed. So just ridiculous things that Wemby is doing this year. All right. Cooper Flagg versus Konanipple. Both teams, obviously Charlotte, started ice cold and they figured things out. They both fallen off a little bit over the last couple of games. Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks are, in full tank mode, trying to pair a point guard to go along Cooper Flagg. That team's going to be right back in the mix next year, assuming the draft goes well for them. But Cooper Flagg has slightly better stats, but he's not driving winning. Konanipple is driving at least limited success for this Charlotte team. Without Konanipple, this team would be just as bad as the Dallas Mavericks are. So I have to give the nod to the younger roommate, if you will. Actually, I think he's older than Cooper Flagg, but whatever. The smaller roommate in Konanipple. I have to give it to Konanipple. I think it's going to be a close race, but Cooper Flagg might not play much down the stretch of the season as they try and lose games as quick as they possibly can, while as the Charlotte Hornets could be a playoff team. Okay, Coach of the Year. This one's really hard, and I think officially it is a 3-horse race between J.B. Bickerstaff, Joe Mazoula, and J.J. Redick now for the Lakers, as we talked about earlier. I'm biased. I have to give it to Joe Mazoula with what he's been able to do with Neemias Queta in the center role, Baylor Shireman, Ugo Gonzalez, Ron Harper Jr., developing all these young players that play with energy, play with hustle, try and win the margins. That's Joe Mazzulla's thing. Just win the margins. That's how they won the game against the Grizzlies yesterday, right? Just winning the offensive rebounds. Ugo Gonzalez was definitely a steal in the draft. He's going to be a talented NBA player on both sides of the ball. Just stuff that, Derek White, he was still doing the things defensively, but he was really struggle shooting the ball for most of the season. Jaylen Brown has ascended. He's the leader of this team. He's carrying this team. He doesn't have much else to go with offensively. Derek White's been struggling. Peyton Pritchard's been struggling. Obviously, they traded away Anthony Simons at the trade deadline. Joe Mazzulla is the Coach of the Year, and I don't think you can argue that. I don't think you can. I know the Pistons have the 1 seed, and Cade Cunningham's out there by himself. But let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I'll say that. If the Pistons can hold on, maybe it goes to Cade Cunningham. But if not, I think you have to give it to Joe Mazoula. All right, I want to wrap up the show with my second team and first team All-NBA guys. I haven't thought about that third team quite yet. I was just really thinking about first team. And this is really hard. You have so many talented guys right now. I think I have to go with the MVPs. or the top 5 MVPs. I think I have to go Wemby, SJ, Luca, Jokic, Brown as the 5 All-NBA first team guys. Jaylen Brown, Jaylen Brown has just been, terrific this year. Fantastic. You can't take him out. And I know Luca was maybe the guy 2 weeks ago that you would have taken out, but he's now arguably the best player in the league, at least playing like it right now. So I have to put Luka in there. I think I have to put Cade Cunningham second team. I think I have to, despite what he's been able to do with the Pistons. And he might not be eligible, so it might be a no-doubter at that point, which is really unfortunate. That brings up a whole other conversation about the 65-game rule and whether that should change. It was supposed to be for guys sitting out. Now it's becoming injuries and all that. That's a totally different conversation. We're not going to have it here. But I think I have to put Cade Cunningham second team, along with Kawhi, despite the Clippers being where they are, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, and that final spot on the second team. I don't know I really haven't thought about. I don't know who you put there. Lots of good guys that you could put there. You could put, I'm just trying to think of players that could be in that spot this year. Tons of guys that you could put there. I'll leave that one up to you as we wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be back with a normal podcast episode after the Wolves game on Monday or Tuesday at some time, as that is the third game here for the Celtics. We're doing podcast episodes after every 3 games with these bonus episodes occasionally as well. But before that, we will have an instant reaction to the Wolves game on Monday night, so we'll have that. Then we'll have a podcast episode. So lots of great content coming on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Follow on TikTok, follow on Twitter, all that good social media, as the Celtics have 12 games to go till the playoffs. Probably a 2 seed, but we'll see if they can catch the Pistons. Hopefully they don't fall off behind the New York Knicks. But this is shaping up to be a fantastic playoff run. Looking for Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown to have bounce-back games after a bad performance against the Memphis Grizzlies. But until next time, go Celtics.